To put it simply, Congressman Hime strongly supports comprehensive immigration reform. He's very excited at this prospect, and I'll talk a little bit about why he supports it, and perhaps the biggest reason of all that he's excited, it might actually pass. Because right now, in divided government, as for folks who have been reading the headlines, with a Republican-controlled House, a Democratic-controlled Senate, but not with 60 votes, which you won't need to have 60 votes in order to get anything passed out of the Senate, and a Democratic White House, the government over the past 3 years has basically kept the lights on. So he is very excited that immigration reform may very well be able to pass in a strong way that would be beneficial to his district and to the country at large. So, to talk about the three big reasons why the Congressman supports this. First off, security. Pure, plain, and simple. The Congressman serves on financial services, so he previously worked at Goldman Sachs for about 12 years. He has a strong understanding of capital markets. He was just appointed to the Intelligence Committee in the Congress on the House side. So he gets classified briefings, and for us as staff, we're very interested to hear what he's able to tell us, and perhaps most importantly, we cannot help him because we are not classified at that status. So he's 3 hours a week is hearing all the briefings from hotspots around the world, from what's going on, and in particular, from that perspective, there are 11 million undocumented individuals in this country that the government has no idea kind of who they are, what they're doing, what the paperwork is, and that's a human tragedy. That's also a strong security risk. If we're able to open up the doors and allow these people to come out of the shadows, find out who are the productive members of society, which are the 95, 96% of them, but also on the security perspective, find out the 1% who aren't, who are criminals, who are felons, who are potentially here to cause harm to this country. This is one key reason why we need to have comprehensive immigration reform. Because if there are 11 million people in the shadows, it's hard to find. If there's a couple thousand who are actually there, nefarious, trying to plan against us, it's a lot easier to hone in on that aspect. And similar principle, this bill, the Gang of Eight bill, if you will, that is being put forward in the Senate, that was described earlier, has some strong security measures to increase security along the border, increase funding for border agents, and in general, heighten the level that it would take to cross what's generally considered a more porous border, the southern border. Although, for folks who say that security is it, the whole shebang, I believe that over 40% of people who are here without documents just overstay their visas. So you can build a 100-foot wall along the Mexican border, and that isn't going to solve your issue, at least for what the other side may say. Second reason, of course, as I said, was in Goldman Sachs for 12 years. He's a businessman, and comprehensive immigration reform is critical for business, all aspects of business. Whether that's ensuring that the companies that are playing by the rules and not hiring undocumented individuals are not getting penalized by folks who are paying folks under the table, who are unscrupulously taking advantage of workers, paying them below the minimum wage. Those unscrupulous individuals who are doing that are hurting the businesses that are playing by the rules, who are doing the right thing. And by having a stronger E-Verify system, getting the incentives in place, which this bill does, you're able to take that off of the table. And what I know is near and dear to many of the people here, the H-1B visa system, and in general, increasing highly skilled visas. The fact that I believe Michael and I were talking, 3 days, 65,000 applications, gone. I think last year was 1 day, and before that, in the past 5 years, it's been at most 1 week to have these visas who are positive contributing members of this society, who will come here, who will help innovate, whether it's Google or anything in the high-tech sector, the immigration sector, and immigrants coming to this country have pushed us forward technologically, growth, etc. And frankly, when they're living here and they're earning a decent salary, they're coming out and eating at great restaurants like this. They're bringing family in. They're contributing to the economy. The bill that is currently in the Senate would increase the number of H-1B visas immediately to 110,000 a year and institute a market cap that, based off the prior year's demand and what's going on, would fluctuate between 115,000 and 180,000. Has some other, other parts to it that I have to Nandita's point is I think is a 900-page bill, and I have a 60-page summary and a 5-page executive summary. Can definitely, if there are questions, delve more into that for you. but immediately increases the number of H-1B visas available and makes it a smoother, more flowing process. And the third reason the Congressman supports this is just the humanity, the humane aspect of it. 11 million undocumented people living in the shadows, some who have been here for 20 years, 30 years, some who, there are people who come into our office probably at least once a week, some of whom are actually my close friends, brought here when they were 2 years old, 5 years old, had no idea that they were undocumented, but aren't able to get a driver's license. They are now in Connecticut, aren't able to get the job that they want. They are, in all intents and purposes, American, and not just the so-called dream actors under a bill that would enable them to have a pathway to citizenship, but in general, people who have come to this country who were economically dislocated, for the most part, that they are going to be more effective for themselves and their families at home, living here and working here and earning here than they had been before. So many of these people who have been living in the shadows as second-class citizens, this bill puts them on a path, a 13-year path, as the case stands in the Senate right now, to become full citizens. And frankly, immediately, barring them having a felony, barring certain other conditions, they no longer have to worry about a presidential administration changing its decree and increasing the deportation of non-felons. So getting them at rest, just the humanity of that, and to the point as well about the family reunification, whether people who had previously been deported and did not have a felony, etc. This bill eliminates the family-based caps for spouses, children, and parents of U.S. citizens and permanent legal residents, but it does eliminate visa preferences for kind of the more further flung, for aunts or siblings, etc. That's the kind of the bargain that was struck there. And also, as I said before, the Congressman was very excited because it could pass. And there is a unique set of circumstances that have come to this because, again, we were talking before with David. We've seen this movie before 6 years ago in 2007 with the slightly reverse, heavily Democratic Congress, a Republican president, and the Republicans' next nominee for president, ultimately John McCain, strongly pushing for this, but it got torpedoed. It ended up that the pressures were too intense in order to get it across the finish line 6 years ago. And there's reason to be hopeful that isn't the case this time. And if you look at those three players again, as I said before, you have a democratically controlled Senate. So there are 55 Democrats in the Senate. And we picked up, the Democrats picked up Senate seats last year in part on the immigration issue, on Hispanics. So they now feel we need to deliver. We've made these promises, we've worked this for so long, and there's energy in the leadership of the United States Senate to push this forward. The president also won Hispanics 72 to 25, which is a huge margin. President Bush won 45% of Hispanics in 2004. And so to have that vote share of an ever-rising population continue to go in that direction is a negative sign for the other party. But for the president, he never has to run for election again. He has one history-making legislative item under his belt right now, healthcare reform from 2010. The president's no longer looking at his own personal election. He's no longer looking at these coalitions. He's looking at legacy. And based off how the gun control bill went, based off the fact that there isn't likely to be a grand bargain of some sort of fiscal compromise coming together based off the current oxygen, the president doesn't have much legacy left. And he recognizes, as a student of history, he has until maybe the middle of next year to get something done before the silly season begins again, whether the midterm elections or, frankly, the jockeying to replace him. So there are already some people who say, oh, he's already a lame duck. That's lunacy. It is the first year of his second term. He has enough juice right now to get something done, and he wants it to be this. And the third leg of the stool is, frankly, not to be partisan, but a little bit more wobbly. The House is controlled by Republicans. And the Republican Party, elements of the Republican Party, the more conservative elements of the Republican Party, have resisted immigration reform for for years. It was the far right wing in 2007, the Heritage Foundation, a congressman by the name of Steve King from Iowa, who represents a very rural, kind of poor area, that torpedoed immigration reform before because, to be frank, I probably shouldn't say this with several cameras running, but there is an element of the Republican Party whose only immigration proposal is deport them now. And it's a strong element within that party. Not all of it. There are some strong leaders, some strong visionaries, and that's the only way that they've been able to move the ball forward. So you have a couple of other things on the Republican side. In the Republican House, what I just said about the president needing to deliver on that 72 to 25 margin from Hispanics, the Republican Party sees the growing number of Hispanics in the country of rising, and that they just got walloped, utterly walloped last year. And so there are plenty of folks in leadership who say, all right, it's time to grow up. I know that you don't like all of this, but we have to do something, because if we sabotage this again, then the Democrats are going to run in 2014 and 2016 ad infinitum saying that the Republican Party is against Hispanics, and that is untenable. So you have that leader, you have that driving cause in the House, and you also have a gentleman by the name of Senator Marco Rubio, who is a first-term senator from Florida who would like to follow another first-term senator, non-white person, directly into the White House. Marco Rubio would like to run for president in 2016. And Marco Rubio is conservative. He was elected on kind of the Tea Party bona fides, but he recognizes that he has a unique position as a Hispanic Republican from Florida to bridge this gap and deliver immigration reform. Though he might have some problems in the Republican primary, it would be a golden story for him amongst the general electorate to be elected president. So he is a strong backer of this and one of the Gang of Eight. So you have all of these things that are lining up together that very well could get us across the finish line. There are lots of pitfalls, of course, along the way, because this whole immigration reform has different poles, whether it's business and labor. We've managed actually to get business and labor relatively aligned, because business recognizes we need to have low-cost labor come in, we need to have high-skilled labor come in, and labor has recognized that, you know, all these people who are currently here and working without documented papers, if we legalize them, put them on a path to citizenship, that can grow the roles of the union and make unions and labor stronger. So it's, again, it's there, but it's a very delicate balance. You also have that similar delicate balance between the liberals on the Gang of Eight, who the ultimate pole, the ultimate bargain is you need to have a pathway to citizenship, and in exchange, you get, you need to have higher security. So that's the ultimate bargain, and that is a very delicate dance that has happened thus far through the Judiciary Committee. So I feel that I'm getting close to 10 minutes, so I'll close with the next steps and where it may very well get across the finish line. This bill has gotten through committee. It is going to be debated, and this is a fortuitous day to hold this because it comes up tomorrow on the floor of the Senate to be debated. There are a couple of key numbers here, 60, 70, and 218. You need 60 votes in the Senate to get anything through, to overcome a filibuster. They believe that they will be able to get 60 votes after looking at the amendments, after having a debate on the floor of the Senate over the next 3 weeks, before the 4th of July recess. If you get 60 votes, the bill is going to die. That might not make sense, but if you only get 60 votes in the Senate, and it goes over to a very conservative-run House, and you have lots of folks who are looking to put, you know, torpedoes into this, there isn't going to be that strong pressure. If you get 70 votes or 75 votes in the United States Senate, a strong bipartisan majority, with Democrats having compromises, with Republicans having compromises, and Marco Rubio and John McCain and Lindsey Graham, all Republican senators leading the way, that puts tremendous pressure right on the base of the neck of the Republican-led House to say, oh, this isn't a partisan bill. We have to do something with this. 218. 218 is the number of votes you need to get to pass something in the House. So that is the Republican Party has a 18 vote majority right now. And so therefore, you have to be able to get 218 votes, some Republicans, but there's also within the House Republican Conference a rule called the so-called Hastert Rule, named for a former Speaker of the House, in which you don't allow anything to come to the floor unless the majority of the majority party would vote for it. So therefore, Speaker Boehner has to figure out and use this pressure. They have 226 members right now. He needs to figure out, where can I get 113 of my party members to pass this? Get enough Democrats on board to also pass it. Whereas right now, as I said, I would say there's about 40 to 45 members of the House right now who the only immigration bill they will vote for is building a 100-foot wall and deporting everyone. So he automatically loses 40 to 50 off of his right flank. So he has to figure that out. And then again, to conclude, the next steps will be the Senate will pass it or won't. I do not disclose. They may very well not pass it. The Senate passes it, the House will pass something, not comprehensive. They would rather do it in a piecemeal fashion so that their members don't have multiple votes that they would have to take on comprehensive reform. So let's say the Senate passes this and the House passes, say, Darrell Issa, who's a congressman from San Diego, so, you know, border-ish area. He has an H-1B bill that instead of just raising the cap, would raise the cap, but in exchange destroy the diversity lottery for visas. So let's say they pass that. Those bills would come together in a conference committee, and something has to be worked out that maintains that delicate coalition of liberals, conservatives, business, labor, etc., to get 60 votes in the Senate and 218 in the House. The Congressman is strongly supportive. He's done multiple events around this. He's working with his own members of the moderate Democratic coalition to keep this on the rails and keep the pressure up, and frankly reaching across the aisle to give moderate Republicans the cover that they need in order to pass this. So he will continue to move forward on this. I'm certain I've exceeded my 10 minutes, but thank you all for your time and for organizing this important seminar.